The first Monday of October had arrived colder than expected. A thin fog rolled across the football field of Ashwood Boarding Academy, a private high school tucked deep in the wooded hills of Pennsylvania. The students shuffled into their classes, complaining about the weather, about homework, about anything at all to avoid the silence that always hung over the school's narrow halls. Ethan Miller, 15 years old, leaned against his desk in the back of room 204. His sneakers tapped against the floor in a restless rhythm. It was fourth period U.S. history, and their teacher, Mr. Crawford, was lecturing about the American Revolution in his usual monotone. Ethan wasn't listening. He never did. But then, the classroom door slammed open. Everyone jumped. Standing in the doorway was Ms. Larkin, a junior teacher. Her face was pale, almost the color of chalk, and her breathing was sharp, uneven. She didn't look at the students. She went straight to Mr. Crawford and whispered into his ear. The whisper wasn't long, only a few seconds, but Mr. Crawford's expression changed immediately. His mouth tightened. His hands trembled as he placed his chalk down. "All right, class," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "I need everyone to stay seated and listen carefully." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. There has been an incident in the town. As a precaution, the school is going into lockdown. No one leaves this building until further notice. The room erupted into nervous chatter. "Is this a drill?" someone asked. "No," Mr. Crawford said firmly. "This is not a drill." That sentence silenced the room. Lockdowns weren't uncommon, and the new students across America knew the protocol. But Ashwood had always felt untouchable, isolated in the woods. Nothing ever happened here. Until now. Ethan's stomach sank. He caught sight of Miss Larkin again before she hurried down the hall. For a second, he thought he saw tears in her eyes. The official announcement came minutes later, a metallic voice over the intercom. "Attention, this is Principal Hayes. The school is now in lockdown. Teachers, secure your classrooms immediately. Students remain silent, and do not leave your rooms until further instructions are given." The click of the microphone cut off, leaving a heavy silence. Mr. Crawford locked the door, pulled the blinds, and shut off the lights. The classroom dimmed into shadows. Only the faint glow of foggy daylight seeped through the curtains. The students huddled together, whispering. Ethan sat stiff, staring at the darkened door, every sound magnified in the silence. A creak in the hallway, a shuffle of feet, or maybe something dragging. Ethan wasn't sure if anyone else noticed. 2 hours passed. No word, no update, just silence. And then Ethan heard it. A scream, distant, muffled, but sharp enough to cut through the air like glass. His eyes widened. He looked around the room. Nobody else reacted. His classmates were whispering, sighing, tapping their phones, even though there was no signal. "Didn't you hear that?" Ethan whispered. No one responded. Another scream, closer this time. Ethan's heart thudded. He stood up, ignoring Mr. Crawford's warning look. He pressed his ear to the door. The sound was faint now, but it hadn't been his imagination. Something or someone was out there. Night fell quickly. The school remained locked down. Teachers whispered updates. The police were searching the grounds. The intruder was still at large. Nobody slept. Ethan lay on the classroom floor, jacket for a pillow, his eyes wide in the dark. His friends snored softly around him, restless. And then, there it was again. Not just a scream this time. A pounding, heavy, desperate, on the other side of the classroom wall. Boom, boom, boom. Ethan's skin prickled. He held his breath, waiting for someone else to react, but no one stirred. It was as if only he could hear it. He turned his head slowly toward the far wall. A faint streak of something dark ran down the plaster. At first, he thought it was water, but then the smell hit him. Copper. Metallic. Blood, and as Ethan stared in horror, the streak grew longer, dripping, sliding, crawling downward. as though something unseen was bleeding into the walls of Ashwood Academy. That was the night that lockdown began, but it was only the beginning, because Ethan would soon discover that the intruder was not the only horror inside the school. Something older top, something hungrier, something that had been waiting in the dark for far too long. The morning came, but it brought no comfort. At Ashwood Academy, dawn was just a gray smear against the fog-soaked windows. The students had spent the night huddled in classrooms, trying to ignore the hunger in their stomachs and the unease in their hearts. Ethan Miller hadn't slept at all. The image of blood seeping through the classroom wall was burned into his mind. He tried to tell himself it was stress, maybe just a trick of the shadows, but deep down, he knew what he had seen, and worse, he knew nobody else had noticed. By mid-morning, Principal Hayes made another announcement. His voice crackled through the intercom, strained, forced calm. Attention students and faculty. The lockdown remains in effect. Please stay in your classrooms. The police are conducting a full search of the grounds. We ask for your patience and cooperation. The line went dead, but in Ethan's class, patience was already wearing thin. I'm starving, one boy muttered. My phone's dead. I can't even text my mom, a girl complained. This is so stupid. If there's really someone here, why haven't they caught him yet? Another added. Mr. Crawford tried to keep order, but even his voice shook. He was just as scared as the students, maybe more. Around noon, Ms. Larkin returned to their classroom with a tray of sandwiches from the cafeteria. The sight of food briefly lifted spirits, but Ethan couldn't shake the look on her face, drawn pale, her hands trembling as she set down the tray. What's going on? Ethan whispered as she passed him a sandwich. Her eyes flickered to his, then quickly away. Don't ask, just eat. And she left before he could press further. By late afternoon, the tension finally cracked. The students were restless. Some whispered rumors about a man with a knife. Others claimed the intruder was wearing a mask. A few insisted there had been a murder in town the night before, and that's why the school was sealed. Ethan's friend, Josh Turner, tried to laugh it off. This is all just some overreaction, dude. Tomorrow we'll be back to normal, and you'll feel dumb for freaking out. But Ethan wasn't so sure, especially not when the pounding returned. It came suddenly, from the far end of the hallway, loud, violent, fists slamming against a door. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone froze. Mr. Crawford held up his hand for silence. The pounding continued for nearly a minute, then stopped as abruptly as it began. No footsteps followed, no voices, nothing, just silence. Night fell again. The school's generator hummed weakly, keeping a few emergency lights on, casting long, sickly yellow shadows across the halls. Teachers allowed students to move between classrooms for bathroom breaks in pairs, always under supervision. That was when it happened. Two sophomore girls, Hannah Brooks and Emily Carter, asked to use the bathroom down the hall. Mr. Crawford sent them with Miss Larkin. Ethan watched as they slipped out into the dim corridor, the door clicking shut behind them. 5 minutes passed, 10, 15. Finally, the door opened again. Miss Larkin returned, her face pale, shaking, but she was alone. Where are Hannah and Emily? Mr. Crawford asked. Her mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Where are they? He demanded. Her voice was barely a whisper. They didn't come back. The classroom erupted in panicked voices. What do you mean they didn't come back? Are you joking? This isn't funny? But Ms. Larkin was trembling so badly she could barely stand. They went inside the restroom. I waited. I called their names. They didn't answer. When I opened the door, she stopped, clutching her stomach as if she might vomit. They were gone. Gone. 2 girls vanished into thin air inside a locked school during a police search. That night, Ethan couldn't close his eyes. The screams he had heard before returned, louder now. echoing through the vents, crying out his name. Ethan jolted upright, sweat soaking his shirt. His classmates stirred, but none woke. He listened. From somewhere down the hall came the faintest sound. Drip, 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 like liquid hitting tile. He rose quietly, moving to the door, pressed his ear against the cool wood. Another scream, a wet sound, like someone choking on blood, and then silence. Ethan backed away, his chest tight. Whatever had taken Hannah and Emily, it was still here, and it was getting closer by morning. Panic was impossible to contain. The disappearance of Hannah and Emily spread through the classrooms like wildfire. Every group of students had their own version of the story. Some said the girls had run away, others whispered they had been taken. A few insisted they had been found dead, and the teachers were hiding the truth. Ethan Miller sat in the back of room 204, chewing the inside of his cheek until it bled. He knew the truth. He had felt it in his bones when he heard the screams in the night. The girls weren't missing. They were gone. Mr. Crawford tried to maintain control, but his voice kept breaking. His normally neat tie hung crooked, his hair muss. Even the teachers were unraveling. Finally, Principal Hayes came over the intercom again. His voice was tired, fraying at the edges. "Students, please remain calm. We are aware of the missing individuals. The authorities are investigating. Please, remain in your classrooms." The microphone clicked off. Remain calm. The phrase was repeated like a prayer, but there was no calm left inside Ashwood Academy. That afternoon, a group of juniors in the room next door broke the rules. They decided to sneak out, convinced the whole lockdown was an elaborate lie. Ethan watched through the narrow classroom window as the three boys, Kyle, Marcus, and Travers, leapt into the hall when their teacher wasn't looking. Their sneakers squeaked faintly on the waxed floor as they hurried toward the stairwell. Minutes later, a sound echoed down the hallway. Not footsteps, not voices, a wet, dragging noise. The kind of sound meat makes when pulled across tile. The sound grew louder, then silence. The scream came 10 minutes. Later high-pitched, raw, cut short like a rope snapped in half. Every student in Ethan's class jumped to their feet. Mr. Crawford tried to hold the door shut, but it was too late. The scream had already etched itself into everyone's mind. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. That night, the teachers allowed students to move in groups to the cafeteria, hoping hot food might calm them. The halls were dim, lit only by the yellow emergency bulbs buzzing faintly overhead. Ethan stayed close to his friend, Josh. His stomach knotted with unease. Then he saw it, a dark streak along the lockers. At first he thought it was rust, but as they walked closer, the smell hit him. Copper, metallic blood. It ran in long smears across the metal, pooling beneath the door of the stairwell, where Kyle, Marcus, and Trevor had gone hours before. Ethan's legs locked. His breath caught in his throat. Josh whispered, "Jesus Christ." The smear continued up the stairwell door. Jagged streaks, as though something had been dragged inside. One of the cafeteria supervisors, Miss Larkin, hurried forward. "Don't look. Don't, just keep moving." She pulled the students away, her voice trembling, but the image was already burned into their minds. Blood. Too much to explain. Too much to deny. Back in the cafeteria, chaos broke loose. Students shouted, demanded answers. Some cried. Others cursed at the teachers, accusing them of hiding the truth. Where are Hannah and Emily? Where are the juniors? What's happening to us? Principal Hayes entered, his face pale and drawn. "Everyone, please, listen." But he didn't get to finish, because at that moment, the lights flickered once, twice, and then the entire cafeteria went black. The room filled with screams. Tables scraped. Plates clattered to the floor. Someone shouted for a flashlight. And then, in the dark, Ethan heard it. A whisper so close, it felt like it brushed against his ear. "Ethan." His heart seized. He spun, searching blindly in the dark, but saw nothing. The lights flickered back on a moment later. Students huddled in clusters, teachers pale and shaking. No one was missing. Not yet. But on the cafeteria floor, smeared across the tiles in something dark and wet, were words that hadn't been there before. "Let me in." The cafeteria reeked of fear. Students clutched one another, teachers whispered frantically, and no one dared look at the words smeared across the tile floor. "Let me in." By the time the police finally arrived, dawn was breaking outside the fogged windows. 2 officers in full uniform entered the cafeteria, their flashlights slicing across pale, terrified faces. "All right, everyone stay calm," one of them said firmly. "I'm Officer Daniels. This is Officer Moore. We're going to keep you safe." The words were meant to reassure, but they fell flat. Safe. How could anyone feel safe after 3 students and 2 girls had already vanished inside a locked building? Principal Hayes spoke quickly, almost too quickly, ushering the officers aside, whispering in hushed tones. Ethan strained to listen, but caught only fragments. Missing. No trace. Can't explain. The officers frowned. Daniels muttered into his radio, but all that answered was static. By late morning, the students were marched back to their classrooms under police escort. The officers began their sweep of the school. 2 men with guns and flashlights against a building that felt older, darker, hungrier than either of them realized. Ethan sat stiffly in room 204, his eyes glued to the hallway beyond the door. Every creak of the floorboards made his skin prickle. Josh leaned over. "You think they'll find anything?" Ethan shook his head. "They're too late." Josh frowned. Too late for what? But Ethan didn't answer, because deep down, he didn't know either. The first scream came an hour later, not from a student, from an officer. Everyone in the classroom froze, as the sound echoed through the hall. A man's voice, raw and panicked, cut short by something heavy slamming against the wall. A thud, a crash. Silence. The students erupted in frightened whispers. "Oh my God, was that a gunshot? What's happening out there?" Mr. Crawford locked the classroom door again, his hands shaking. "Stay put. Don't move." But Ethan, couldn't he? Crept to the door, pressing his ear against the wood. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, and then he heard it. The same wet, dragging noise from before. A sound that made his stomach turn. Something being pulled across tile. But layered beneath it was something else. A voice, low, guttural, almost human. "Mine." Ethan jerked back. No one else seemed to hear it. An hour later, only one officer returned. Officer Moore, his uniform torn, his face pale as chalk. He staggered into the cafeteria where teachers had gathered, speaking in a hushed, frantic voice. Ethan couldn't hear everything, but the fragments that carried made his blood run cold. Not human. The walls. Blood everywhere. Daniels. Is gone? Gone? Another vanished. Another swallowed whole by Ashwood Academy. That night, the lockdown grew unbearable. Students refused to sleep. Some cried openly, rocking back and forth in their chairs. Ethan sat in the corner, his eyes fixed on the darkened hallway beyond the door, and that's when he saw it. A shape, faint, blurry, just beyond the window in the classroom door. At first it looked like a person standing there, watching, but the longer he stared, the less human it became. Its head bent at an unnatural angle, its arms too long, fingers dragging across the floor, and in the dim glow of the emergency lights, Ethan swore he saw its face pressed against the glass. A face that wasn't a face at all, just a gaping, endless black void. He gasped, stumbling back. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Josh whispered. Ethan pointed. "There, don't you see it?" Josh looked. "See what?" "There's nothing there." But Ethan knew the truth. It was there, watching, waiting, and it wasn't going to leave. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the intercom crackled to life. Every student sat up, staring at the speaker overhead. The voice that came through wasn't Principal Hayes. It wasn't even human. It was low, rough, like broken glass dragged across stone, and it spoke only one word: hungry. The intercom clicked off, and the silence that followed was worse than the voice itself. No one slept after the voice. The single word hungry still echoed in every ear, vibrating like a sickness that clung to the walls. Students huddled together in corners, whispering prayers or cursing under their breath. Teachers walked aimlessly, trying to look composed, but their eyes betrayed the truth. They were just as terrified. By morning, the air inside room 204 was sour with fear and sweat. Ethan Miller sat against the wall, knees pulled to his chest. His skin tingled, as if the word was still crawling beneath it. He hadn't told anyone about the shape he saw at the classroom window. No one would believe him. They never did. By midday, paranoia bloomed. A freshman named Chloe stood up suddenly, pointing at another student across the room. "It's him," she cried. "He's the reason this is happening." The boy Thomas stammered. "What? No, You were gone for 20 minutes. Yesterday, you could have taken Hannah and Emily. You could have written those words in the cafeteria." The room erupted into shouts. Some defended Tommy, others piled onto Chloe's accusation. Mr. Crawford shouted over them, his voice cracking. "Enough. Sit down, all of you. This is exactly what it wants. Don't let fear turn you against each other." But the damage was done. Suspicion spread like rot. Every whisper became an accusation. Every glance felt dangerous. Ethan caught Josh's eye. His friend looked pale, lips pressed tight. "They're losing it," Josh muttered. "We're trapped in here, and we're turning on each other." Ethan didn't reply. He was staring at the wall again, at the faint dark streaks that no one else seemed to notice. Blood, still dripping. Slowly, silently. That evening, a storm rolled in. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder rattled the building. Emergency lights flickered, shadows jerking across. The classroom. The tension finally snapped. The door rattled. Once, twice, then violently, as though someone was trying to force it open from the hall. Students screamed. Mr. Crawford rushed forward, bracing the door with his shoulder. "Stay back," he barked. The rattling grew louder, fiercer. Something slammed against the door hard, enough to crack the frame. Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to run, to hide, but his eyes were locked on the small square window in the door. The shape was back, that impossible shape with arms too long, head bent at a grotesque angle. Pressing its faceless void against the glass, Ethan choked out a warning. "It's here." Before anyone could react, the lights died. Darkness swallowed room 204. Screams erupted. Desks crashed over. Someone sobbed. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." And then came the scratching. Long, jagged claws raking down the metal of the door. Ethan clamped his hands over his ears, but he still heard it, scraping straight into his skull. Screechy chic. The scratching stopped. For a moment, there was silence, thick, suffocating silence. Then the door burst open. Something surged inside. Not a man, not a student, not anything Ethan's mind could fully comprehend. It moved on all fours, its body jerking, like a puppet on tangled strings. Its arms bent the wrong way, its fingers clicking on the floor like nails. The stench of rot filled the air. Students shrieked, scattering, pressing themselves against the walls. "Stay back," Mr. Crawford shouted, brandishing a chair like a weapon. The thing's head twitched toward him, and in a voice that was not its own, broken and wet, it mimicked him. "Stay back." Then it lunged. The chair splintered against its body as Mr. Crawford swung. The creature slammed into him, dragging him down. His scream cut off almost immediately. Blood sprayed across the floor. Chaos exploded. Students shoved each other, clawing for the far wall. Some tried to climb onto desks. Josh grabbed Ethan's arm. yanking him toward the corner. The creature jerked upright again, its limbs too long, its face still nothing but a gaping void. And then, horribly, impossibly, it began to change. Its arms shortened, its head twisted, back into place, until it looked like Mr. Crawford, bloody, broken, but him. Students gasped, frozen in terror, and then the thing smiled. A jagged, unnatural stretch of lips splitting across where the void had been. "Class dismissed," it said in Mr. Crawford's voice, and it charged again. Screams shattered the night. Room 204 was chaos. Desks overturned, glass splintered, blood sprayed across the walls. The thing wearing Mr. Crawford's stolen face lunged into the crowd of students, its limbs snapping and jerking as it swiped at anyone too slow to move. "Run," someone shouted. The lock was broken. The door hung open. Panic-stricken teenagers poured into the hall, their footsteps echoing like thunder through the empty building. Ethan was shoved forward, nearly tripping. Josh's hand clamped onto his wrist, dragging him into the stampede. Behind them, the creature shrieked, a sound like steel tearing apart, high-pitched and unnatural. The halls of Ashwood Academy had never felt so endless. Emergency lights flickered, painting the corridor in pulses of sickly yellow. Students slammed into doors, desperate to escape, but every classroom was locked, every exit chained. "Where do we go?" Josh panted. Ethan shook his head, his heart hammered, throat raw from breathing too fast. "Just keep moving." The shriek came again, closer this time. Ethan glanced over his shoulder and his blood froze. The creature crawled on the walls, its limbs bent like spider legs, claws digging into plaster, dragging its twisted body along the ceiling. Its void face twitched, tilting, as it chased them, impossibly fast, impossibly silent except for the scrape of claws and the wet click of joints. Students screamed. One tripped. Another shoved past him. The creature dropped. A sickening crack, and then nothing but silence, where the boy had been. They split at the stairwell. Half the students ran down. The other half, including Ethan and Josh, scrambled upward, toward the dorm floors. The upper halls were darker, quieter, the storm outside rattling the windows. "Here." Josh yanked Ethan into a janitor's closet. They slammed the door shut, pressing their backs against it, their breath ragged. For a moment, there was only silence. Ethan pressed his palm over his mouth, trying to calm his breathing. His whole body trembled. Then came the sound: drip. Drip, drip. Josh stiffened. What? What is that? Ethan turned slowly. In the dim emergency glow seeping under the door, he saw it: blood pooling across the closet floor, sliding between their shoes. Jesus, Josh whispered, backing against the wall. Where is it coming from? Ethan looked up. The ceiling tiles bulged. Something wet seeped through the cracks. And then dash thump. A hand fell through. Not attached to an arm. Not attached to anything. Just a severed hand, still twitching fingers, curling like it was alive. Josh gagged, stumbling back. The ceiling above them ripped open. A body crashed down, or what was left of one. It was Marcus the Jr. who'd vanished days ago. His face was twisted in a silent scream, his chest torn open, his body mangled almost beyond recognition. Josh vomited into the corner. Ethan could only stare, numb, his vision tunneling. But then Marcus's body twitched. Its mouth opened, and Ethan heard his own name hissed from the dead boy's throat. Ethan. The closet door rattled violently. Claws scraped against it, the wood splintering. Josh screamed. It's here, it's here. Ethan grabbed his arm. We have to move. They shoved the door open and bolted into the hall, just as the claws tore through the wood behind them. The hall lights flickered, and for a split second, Ethan saw the thing again only. Now it didn't wear Mr. Crawford's face. It wore Marcus's single quotes as bloody, broken, smiling. Run, Ethan, it crooned in Marcus's voice. Run. They ran until their lungs burned, until their legs gave out. Finally, they collapsed in the girls' dorm common room, where a handful of students had barricaded themselves with mattresses and chairs. The moment Ethan and Josh stumbled inside, the barricade slammed shut again. "Did you see it?" one girl whispered, eyes wide with terror. Ethan nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "It's hunting us," another student whispered. "It doesn't want the teachers. It wants us." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Then Ethan realized something. They weren't all wrong, because every time the thing appeared, every time it whispered, it was always calling for him, always Ethan. The common room was thick with sweat, fear, and whispers. Mattresses and chairs blocked the doors, but the students inside knew it wouldn't last. The creature had torn through wood, plaster, and even people. A pile of furniture wouldn't stop it. Ethan sat against the wall, staring at his trembling hands. Josh crouched beside him, muttering curses under his breath. "Why is it after us?" a girl asked, hugging her knees. "Why won't it just leave?" "It's not after us," Josh said darkly. His eyes flicked to Ethan. "It's after him." The room went silent. Dozens of terrified eyes turned toward Ethan. He swallowed, throat dry. "That's not true." "Bullshit," Josh snapped. "It whispered your name, Ethan. We all heard it. Every time it shows up, it's calling for you. Don't act like you don't know why." Ethan shook his head violently. I swear, I don't know what it wants from me." But even as he said it, a cold doubt burrowed into his gut, because he remembered the dreams, the voice calling to him long before tonight, the hand reaching from the darkness. In the strange way, Principal Hale had looked at him earlier, like he wasn't surprised. The storm raged harder outside. Windows rattled. The barricade shifted under the weight of the wind. Then came the knock. 3 slow knocks against the barricade. Everyone froze. "Don't," a boy whispered. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." But the knocking came again, louder this time, deliberate. Josh's face drained of color. "That's not the thing. That's someone else. Help me," a voice cried. "Please, let me in." It was a girl's voice, thin, desperate. Several students rushed to the barricade, grabbing at chairs. "No," Ethan hissed, his skin crawling. "That's not real. That's it. It's trying to trick us." "How the hell do you know?" someone snapped. Because Ethan whispered, his chest tightening. That voice, that was Emily. The room went cold. Emily had been one of the first students taken. Her body was never found. The knocking turned violent. The voice rose into a wail. "Please, Ethan, please, open the door." Everyone turned toward him. He shook his head, backing away. "It's not her. It's not." Then, the barricade exploded inward. The door splintered. Furniture toppled. Students screamed as the creature forced its way inside. Limbs bending grotesquely. Marcus's bloody face stretched into a grin. Chaos erupted. The thing lunged. Claws tore through a boy's throat, spraying blood across the ceiling. Another student was hurled into the wall with bone-snapping force. The barricade had given them a fragile illusion of safety. Now it was nothing but a slaughterhouse. Ethan scrambled to his feet, Josh yanking him toward the back exit. Students scattered like terrified animals. But the creature wasn't chasing them. It was crawling toward Ethan, its body convulsed joints, cracking, head twitching. "Ethan," it crooned, Marcus's mouth stretching impossibly wide. "Come with me," Josh screamed, shoving Ethan through the back door. They bolted down the hall as the common room dissolved into chaos behind them. The screams of their classmates echoed, wet, tearing sounds, and underneath it all, the sound of the creature's claws. Click, click, click. Getting closer, they sprinted into the library. Rows of shelves loomed like a maze, shadows stretching long in the dim light. They collapsed behind the circulation desk, gasping for air. Ethan's ears rang with the screams they'd left behind. His chest burned with guilt, terror, and a question he couldn't shake. Why him? Why always him? Josh gripped his shoulder, eyes wild. We can't outrun this thing. We need answers. There's something about this school, Ethan. Something about you. If we don't figure it out, we're dead. Ethan nodded weakly, but inside, dread twisted, because deep down, he feared Josh was right. And worse, he feared the answer was already inside him. The library was silent, except for the ragged sound of their breathing. Shadows stretched between the shelves, long and sharp, like claws reaching for them. Every creak of the building made Ethan flinch. Somewhere, in the distance, they could still hear faint screams, the dying cries of the students they'd abandoned. Josh pressed a finger to his lips. Quiet. They crept deeper, weaving between towering shelves of dusty books. The place smelled of mold and old paper, with a faint undertone of copper. Like dried blood, it was too quiet. The kind of silence that pressed on the eardrums, making every heartbeat sound deafening. Ethan's eyes kept flicking to the dark gaps between shelves. He expected to see Marcus's broken body lurking there, smiling. Waiting, at the far end of the library, stood a locked door, marked Archives. Josh tugged the handle. It rattled uselessly. Figures. Ethan glanced at the circulation desk. Drawers hung open, papers scattered. Something had ransacked the place. He pulled open the lowest drawer, and froze. A heavy ring of keys sat inside. Josh grabbed them with shaking hands, fumbling through until one clicked in the archive door. The lock turned with a groan. Inside, the air was colder. Dust hung in the beam of a flickering fluorescent light. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls, their drawers stuffed with folders yellowed by time. Josh rifled through them, muttering, "There has to be something. Some reason this is happening." Ethan wandered to the back. A large leather-bound register sat on a table, its cover cracked and brittle. The gold letters across the front read, Ashwood Academy Incident, REPRTS. His stomach tightened. He flipped it open. The first few pages detailed normal school problems, fights, cheating, vandalism, but then the entries grew darker. 1979 student, found in dormitory, throat slit, ear to ear. No weapon recovered. 1982. Multiple witnesses claimed to hear voices calling their names during lockdown drill. Principal instructed to keep silent. 1989 teacher discovered hanged in gymnasium. Rope tied in a knot, no staff could replicate. 1996, student disappeared. Blood trail ended at library archives. Body never found. Ethan's hands trembled as he turned the pages. Dozens of entries, dozens of deaths, all covered up, and again, a phrase repeated in different handwriting, different years. It wanted one of them. Josh leaned over his shoulder, his face drained of color. This has been going on for decades. Ethan's chest tightened. He could almost feel the words pressing into him, choosing him. "It's not random," he whispered. It's a pattern." Suddenly, the lights flickered. The room fell into darkness. Ethan froze. His pulse thundered in his ears. From the silence came a sound. Click, click, click. The claws. Somewhere in the library. Josh's hands fumbled through the folders, knocking papers to the floor. Shit, shit, shit. Stop, Ethan hissed, but it was too late. The thing was here. They could hear its breath, now wet, rattling, wrong, and then, a whisper. So close it felt like it was inside Ethan's head. Ethan. His name, stretched like a song. Josh grabbed his arm, yanking him under the archive table, as heavy footsteps dragged closer. Ethan's throat burned with the need to scream, but he clamped his hands over his mouth. Through the thin crack beneath the door, he saw a shadow shift. A twisted body, limbs too long, head cocked at an unnatural angle. It lingered, listening, waiting. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, but in the darkness he saw something worse, a vision, the creature standing over him. But its face was his own, its eyes his eyes, and a voice whispering not in his ear, but from inside his chest. "You've always been mine." When Ethan opened his eyes again, the shadow was gone. The silence returned, but his body wouldn't stop shaking. Josh grabbed the register, clutching it to his chest. We can't stay here. If this book is right, it's not just killing at random. It's choosing, and it's not stopping until it gets what it wants. Ethan swallowed hard, staring at the empty doorway. Deep down, he already knew what it wanted, and he wasn't sure if he could fight it. The library was dead silent. Josh clutched the heavy register to his chest, his knuckles pale. Ethan stood frozen by the archive door, ears straining, waiting for the scrape of claws to return, but nothing came. Instead, the air pressed heavy around them, as though the building itself were holding its breath. We need to get out," Josh whispered. Ethan nodded, but his gaze kept drifting back to the floor beneath the archive table. His heart hammered. The vision wouldn't leave him, his own face stretched across that thing's body, those familiar eyes staring back. He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. "There's something else here. I saw blood on the floor." Josh frowned. "What are you talking about?" Ethan knelt, running his hand across the dusty floorboards. At first, nothing. Then his palm brushed against a faint groove. A seam. A-trapdor. The boys pried it open with shaking hands. The wood screeched against rusted hinges, revealing a narrow staircase plunging into darkness. A stench wafted upward, rot, mildew, and something unmistakably metallic. Blood. Josh gagged. "You want to go down there?" Ethan forced himself to nod. If this has been happening for decades, if the book is right, maybe the answers are there. Josh's eyes darted toward the library door. Or maybe that thing is down there. Ethan swallowed. It's everywhere. And with that, he stepped onto the first stair. The descent was suffocating. The walls were stone, slick with condensation. Their phone flashlights barely cut the dark. Beams swallowed by the heavy air. The steps creaked and moaned as if protesting their weight. Every sound echoed, stretching into eternity. Halfway down, Ethan froze. On the wall beside him, words had been scratched deep into the stone. Jagged letters, carved by desperate hands. "IT doesn't live here. IT is here." Josh's breathing quickened. Jesus Christ. The further they went, the more the air stank of iron. The stone walls turned, red-black with smeared handprints. Dried, cracked, but unmistakably human. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a massive chamber. It didn't look like part of the school at all. The ceiling arched like the inside of a church, but the walls were raw stone, lined with dozens of recesses. Inside each niche lay a bundle wrapped in burlap, stained dark. Josh's voice cracked. Those are bodies." Ethan approached one, his hands trembling. He brushed the cloth back just enough to see. A severed arm, shriveled and pale, fingers curled in a final spasm. He staggered back, choking down bile. The entire chamber was a tomb. At the far end stood a massive wooden door, carved with symbols. Neither of them recognized. Ethan reached out to touch it, and the voices began. Low whispers, slithering into his ears, curling around his thoughts. "Not outside, but inside. Ethan Chosen, you've always been ours." He jerked his hand back, trembling. Josh grabbed his arm. "Don't listen to it. Don't. We need to leave." But Ethan couldn't move. His eyes were fixed on the door. On the cracks where a faint red glow pulsed like a heartbeat, and then the door breathed, would flexed outward, as if something inside was inhaling. The burlap bundles are USTL, led one by one. The corpses began to stir. Josh screamed as the nearest sack tore open, skeletal fingers clawing free. A head rolled back, jaw hanging open in a soundless wail. Another body twitched, another lurched upright. Soon the chamber was alive with the "Dead Run," Josh shouted, grabbing Ethan by the arm. But Ethan couldn't tear his eyes from the glowing cracks in the door. His head pounded, his chest burned. It was calling him. Every step backward felt wrong, like his body wanted to go toward the door, not away. Ethan, move. Josh pulled harder. Finally, Ethan stumbled after him, their footsteps echoing as the dead clawed free from their wrappings. But just before they reached the stairs, Ethan heard it, a voice, not whispered, but screamed. Ethan, open the door. He staggered, knees buckling, hands clamped over his ears. Josh dragged him up the steps as the chamber below erupted into chaos. The corpses were climbing, and behind it all, the heartbeat glow from the door pulsed brighter, faster, stronger. They burst back into the archives, slamming the trapdoor shut behind them. Ethan collapsed to the floor, gasping. Josh dropped the register beside him. We can't fight this. We can't even understand it. We need to get out of this school. But Ethan's gaze drifted back to the trapdoor. His body was shaking, not from fear, something deeper, something that felt like hunger. And when he finally spoke, his voice wasn't entirely his own. What if it doesn't want us to leave? The library walls groaned as if the building itself was listening. Josh paced in frantic circles, his sneakers squeaking against the tile. We've got to move. We've got to get out before whatever that was comes up here. Ethan sat slumped against the wall, his eyes unfocused, his lips whispering something Josh couldn't hear. Ethan? Josh knelt in front of him, shaking his shoulders. Snap out of it, man. You're not. Ethan's head snapped up. His pupils had blown wide, nearly eclipsing the gray of his irises. He grinned, slow and unnatural. They're already here, Josh. The trapdoor beneath them shuddered. Thud, thud, thud. Something pounded from below. Wood cracked. Dust billowed. Into the room, Josh stumbled backward, eyes wide. Oh God, the door exploded upward in a spray of splinters. Hands. Dozens of them. Charred, pale, skeletal, grabbing at the edges, clawing their way into the archive. The corpses spilled out, moving wrong, twitching like broken marionettes. Their jaws clacked, grinding out guttural moans. Josh screamed, yanking Ethan to his feet. Move, damn it. They bolted through the library, past shelves that rattled and toppled as the dead surged behind them. The hallways were worse. Every locker door hung open, slamming shut in unison as they ran. Light fixtures flickered and burst, raining glass. Shadows crawled along the walls, stretching long, then snapping back as if the building itself were alive. The fire alarms screamed, a shrill metallic wail that set Josh's teeth on edge. Ethan stumbled, grabbing his head, his vision blurred. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were roars. Come back. Open the door. Let us in. He dropped to his knees. Josh spun, grabbing his arms. Don't listen to it. It's not you, Ethan. It's not. But Ethan's voice overlapped with the roar, a harmony of human and inhuman. I don't have a choice. The corpses surged into the hallway. Their footsteps weren't heavy, they were light, skittering too fast. Josh dragged Ethan down the corridor toward the gym. The exit sign glowed at the far end like salvation. The gym doors burst open with a slam, and they stumbled inside, empty, silent to silent. The basketball hoops creaked, the bleachers groaned, and then, from the shadows above, came a shape. It dropped soundlessly, unfolding into the nightmare Ethan had seen before, its body impossibly tall, its skin stretched and shifting, its face his own face gazing back at him. Josh froze, paralyzed by the sight. The monster smiled. The corpses piled into the gym behind them, a writhing sea of the dead. The exit door slammed shut of its own accord, locking with a metallic snap. No way out. Josh turned to Ethan, tears streaming down his face. Fight it, please, fight it. Ethan's body trembled. His mouth opened, and the monster spoke through. Him, he is ours. He was always ours. The creature lunged. Josh shoved Ethan aside, grabbing a broken piece of bleacher wood and swinging with every ounce of strength he had. The wood splintered against the thing's torso, Useless. It didn't even flinch. Instead, it reached out, palm pressing against Josh's chest. His scream cut short as his body convulsed, veins bulging, black eyes rolling back into his skull. Ethan scrambled forward, grabbing Josh's arm. No, don't take him. Take me. The monster tilted its head, eyes glittering with something that might have been amusement. And then, slowly, it withdrew its hand from Josh. Josh collapsed, wheezing, alive but broken. The monster turned to Ethan, and Ethan didn't resist. He walked forward, steps calm, steady. His hand met the creature's. Their skin melded, the gym lights shattered, plunging everything into red emergency glow. Ethan's body arched back, mouth opening in a silent scream as the entity poured into him. His skin split in places, light searing through the cracks. His shadow stretched, elongated, becoming something else entirely. And then silence. The corpses collapsed like marionettes with their strings cut. Josh lay gasping on the floor, staring in horror. Ethan stood above him, but it wasn't Ethan anymore. His eyes glowed faint red. His smile was too wide. His voice was layered, both his and countless others. The door is open. The final bell rang, but no one left the school that night. By morning, the police found the building deserted. No students, no teachers, no bodies, just silence. And in the gym, scrawled across the wall in blood, 3 words: "We are free."